Welcome to our next episode of Coffee with Sales Engineers. I am so excited to be reconnecting with my longtime friend, Kevin Burpo. The reason I'm excited about this episode is because Kevin has an amazing, interesting, unique journey of sales engineering that goes from integration consulting to services to co-founding a company to sales engineering at some of the biggest companies in the world. So Kevin, welcome to Coffee with Sales Engineers.
I appreciate it. It's always great to reconnect, especially as we've been friends for a long time and we've had quite a journey. And it's kind of fun to be at this place and talking about sales engineering, where we're at in our career.
Kevin, you and I need to get a real coffee together.
Absolutely.
Why don't you give us a quick intro about you, where you are, and then we'll dive into some of our questions.
Currently, I'm a principal SC at Salesforce, been over here about 5 years. I think for anybody in my network that knows me, they know that this is kind of a natural fit that was destined to happen, as I've been involved in Salesforce in one way or another for probably 20 years. Whether that was as a competitor, I co-founded an SI that we focused primarily on doing Salesforce deployments, training, development, etc. As well as, even while I may have been on the services side, I kind of had some responsibilities for bringing Salesforce in, etc. So yeah, I mean, again, it was kind of a journey to get here. Originally, I started in services. I was support. I was integration consulting, pulling up black and white screens, writing XML code to move data between systems, and moved into services leadership, managed project management teams, consulting teams, support teams. It takes a lot of effort to get things up and running and ultimately to keep things rolling. And balancing 3 kids under 3 and trying to run a company, it just wasn't the right spot. So I gracefully stepped out from that. The company continued on for many years, very successfully. But this was that inflection point where I was thinking, well, where do I go from here? Thankfully, I had the benefit of a little bit of time to think through that and be real purposeful in that decision. It was really a decision between, do I go back onto the services side, potentially going back into services leadership, or do I take a different path? And that path was a lot of what came out of being one of the primary sellers at my firm and really involved in not just prospecting and finding new business, getting services work sold, but really looking at what was it that I really enjoyed about being in those types of conversations, especially in comparison to services and delivery work.
Mhm.
And so I came to this point and really realized that what was bringing me a ton of energy and a ton of excitement during that time was the actual selling aspect. And I'm using air quotes on selling because I really like to look at it more as like this, the solutioning. For me, solutioning is so much more than trying to sell something. It's really learning your customers, understanding what it is they're trying to achieve, whether that's overcoming problems, looking to unlock new efficiencies, whatever that might be. But you're getting beyond just saying, hey, do you want to buy this thing? Getting into that truly deep conversation that brings value to them. As I started to realize that about myself, that's when I made that decision of going down the sales engineering path. In my career, I'd worked with sales engineers quite extensively. I was pretty familiar with what the role entailed. That's when I transitioned into Act 2 of my career, which I've been in for probably 11, 12 years at this point. Haven't looked back. It's been the best decision I've made to move into a sales engineering role. So yeah, that's kind of how I came to be in this spot. And obviously I
Yeah.
can
I love the second act and the great story in terms of after you've had these many experiences, we all observe that sales engineering is also a great profession that gives you visibility into many other functions. So it's easier for sales engineers to be able to do other things, product management, partner management, channel sales, sales itself. And it's also very enticing because you're like, oh, I've seen this, I can do this. But in your second act, after you had done all the other flavors, you came back to sales engineering. I want to take us back to the first act because you said something that as your friends, coworkers are listening to this, they would understand naturally why you're in it. You didn't, when you were in college or graduating, you didn't know that you were a natural great sales engineer. Can you think of the moment where Did you even know anybody in sales engineering? How did you ever even learn about what the heck sales engineering is?
So no, I had no idea that this role career existed in any fashion. So to be honest, when I was in college, I was originally a computer science major. And then I wound up switching my junior year over into management information systems in the business school. There's a whole host of reasons, but the big thing coming away from that was this idea of I want to look at the applicability of the technology along with the technical aspects. Computer science being much more deep into the technology side of it. So when I came out, it was very much a thinking of, and I remember I was living in Dallas at the time after school because my parents were living there. And I remember joining some networking groups and I kind of put some feelers out there and I literally said, "Oh, I want to be in IT." And the responses were, "Well, what kind of IT?" I had no idea. And I was young. I just came to college, but I literally had no idea. It's like, I don't know. I just want to be in technology. And as I started looking for jobs, I started coming across basically web development type jobs.
Right.
And that piqued my interest because I had done some stuff on my own in college, whether it was like standing up sites for the website for the cycling team that I was a part of or whatnot, but always like that. Right. So I kind of naturally just started gravitating towards that and fell into that kind of role. I would say that, to be honest, even when I started there, I think we originally had sales engineers at that time. So it wasn't even, oh, well, I started and all of a sudden I saw this sales engineering role. I think it was late 4 or 5 years later that we kind of started first introducing them within the company. And that was, I'd probably say that was the first exposure to them. But again, I never really thought at the time that was right for me because I very much I'm a very practical, process driven, XYZ type person. And what I mean by that, I like to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And so services work naturally. What do we need to do? Here's how we do it. It's just, we need to get this set up. So we did it. And to be honest, I was good at that. I could pick up new technologies, learn them, get them up and running, whatever it might be. You can imagine that's why that naturally through my career progression led to leadership type roles within services, ultimately a consulting firm. It wasn't until when I was running the consulting firm, because we were a small shop, so we wearing a lot of hats, as you talked about, but it wasn't until then that I really started to realize and unlock.
You were in your form, right? Like that. Yeah. The combination of that business and technical is what kind of came together.
And people have asked me, why didn't you go be a sales rep? And it's this idea of, if you think about what I said, like, I like to get my hands dirty. I like to do things, etc. Total side note, like one of my hobbies outside of work is I love to do woodworking. That's very methodical, very precise. And that gives me an outlet for that level of detail that I really love. But what I realized with the solution engineering approach and not being sales is, I don't want to say it's not sales. We all know it is sales, but it not solely sales, is that it allows me to sit right in between both of those, where I do get this aspect of engrossing myself in technology and understanding the inner workings of it. I get to build demos. I love it. I thrive. I don't want to do it 100% of the time. It brings me a lot of energy when I start to build out demos. However, I'll say this, and this kind of fits to the other side of it, is what I don't like are, when I think about building demos and doing these things, if they're aimless. If we're just doing it to do it, it just doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't bring me that level of joy. And so that's when I say, like, the other side of it is that selling aspect or that solutioning aspect is, why are we doing this? How is this going to impact? How is this going to bring value to our customers and move them forward in whatever that need may be? And again, it was that identification of that sweet spot between the two. The last thing I'll say is, looking back after doing this career for over a decade, it wasn't year one that I was like, yes, I got this all figured out. I think anybody who's made the transition from services into sales engineering probably knows this. You really have to readjust yourself to the way you approach problems from a sales engineering perspective, because obviously in delivery of any sort, think we very much need to have all the details ironed out. You got to have everything ironed out, every single detail. And when you get into sales engineering, you can't take that level of approach. To be honest, that's not even, if you're getting to that level of degree, you're honestly probably doing your customers a disservice at that point, because I think that you tend to lose sight of the true reasoning behind the evaluation, the conversation, whatever it might be.
The art of the possible that you're trying to figure out, not tactical, how is it going to get done? Because even the buyer is not in that mind frame of exactly how I'm going to do it. They're still trying to figure out, why should I?
Why should I do this? Because, and to be honest, whether you can create this field or flip this switch or whatever it might be, like that's not always the why.
Right.
The why is a business problem or a business objective in some way. And they're not going to go to whoever's going to approve budget and say, hey, look, we can do all these 75,000 features and functions.
Yeah.
They're going to say, look, our business, if it's a public company, you can go see, read the 10Ks, whatever it might be, and see what are the corporate goals for this year. And those need to connect all the way down to that project. That project needs to connect up and influence that in some way.
I'm trying to put the pieces together that's core to you, to Kevin, that has helped you be so successful in sales engineering. Because as unique as this experience is, and I'm glad you mentioned that you know all this now after 20 years, neither you or I, my friend, graduated with a degree in sales engineering. We didn't go 4 years of school where our first job, we were trained to do sales engineering. None of us are actually trained or certified to do sales engineering. We figured it out. And it shouldn't be that you have to work in it for 20 years to figure it out. That what you were saying, that intellectual curiosity is critical for this role. The ability to be in the details. I think your woodworking experience is amazing. As I look for candidates when I'm interviewing, I'm less worried about what they have done. I'm always curious about, what do you do in your pastime? Do you build bikes? Do you write music? Have you worked on your car? And those are the things that are giving me those insights into, is this person going to get into the details when a prospect really needs to, expecting you to build a solution. So I love that. Tell me about, you've done sales engineering at small companies, big companies. As people are wanting to get into sales engineering, they see sales engineering positions come up at Oracle, they see sales engineering positions come up at their local startup. What are some experiences and differences in being a sales engineer at a small, big, early stage? Give us some insights into from your experience.
What I've typically seen with a smaller company, early stage company, is that you typically have a niche product. You've got our solution. This is what it solves. Generally, I think about our early days. It was a, fundraising software, fundraising CRM for nonprofits. And with that comes the expectation to be super deep in your product. You're focused. Like that can be very rewarding as you look at the spectrum of companies. Typically, smaller companies are focused on a singular product, which allows you to be super deep. Now, as you move into larger companies, they typically have more and more offerings, and they will absolutely have those specialist roles within those companies.
Spectrum of generalist to specialist, right? And at the early stage startup, single product, you're specialist because, like you're saying, you need to go deep into your single product. But you are a generalist when you're at a big company with multiple products, because you got to know a little bit. So it sounds like you're fluctuating between generalist and specialist. And for people, there may be one side of the spectrum that you're more comfortable with or more passionate about.
Exactly. The big picture. How does this all come together to ultimately influence whatever the objective is for the evaluation, right?
Yeah.
Overcoming problems, new objectives, etc. Some people love the deep in one particular area where they can answer every question right off the cuff and they're done. And so I think as people think about this career, it's really worth doing some introspection on what really resonates with you. Do you feel comfortable when things are a little ambiguous, or do you have that need to know every detail? There's roles at every company, all up and down the spectrum, just depending on how they go to market, how they've structured their teams.
Sales engineering is not the same in every company, and it's not the same in every department. Your one big decision is, should I go into sales engineering if I'm doing product management or sales or project management?
Yeah.
What are the key characteristics that excite me, and could I get that within sales engineering? And then the next phase is, once you're thinking about sales engineering, which spectrum of this generalist, specialist, solutioning that you may want to focus more on in your career?
To be honest, if you make that decision, it's not set in stone, right?
Right.
Like actually, when I first got into sales engineering, it was very much a single product focus.
Yeah.
But as I grew and learned more and got more exposure, it became apparent that I was, better suited to go more broad, more platform type plays. And I mean, you can also go the other way too. You could easily switch and say, hey, you know what? I've been doing this for 5 years or 6 years. And you know what? I want to specialize for a while. The great thing is that there's also an aspect of just the soft skills that you develop as a sales engineer that are completely transferable depending on where you land on the spectrum. Are you learning and training yourself better, improving yourself on your presentation skills, your speaking skills, getting rid of your crutch words, creating a concise, compelling message, learning that I don't have to call out every single button and text that's on the screen. Those are all transferable. And so it's a balancing act of taking those and then figuring out where I'm at right now. What's the type of solution engineering I want to do?
I love that you've broken these into acts because it makes it easy for me to ask questions. It's one thing to get into sales engineering. It's another thing to stay in sales engineering. Obviously went through that moment of, okay, I've done a whole bunch of other things. What do I really want for the rest of my foreseeable career? And you chose to go back to sales engineering. What are some things about this profession that just keeps you going, that just keeps you motivated? Because we have just learned you love to tinker around, you're a technologist, you're curious, you're figuring out the why. So what keeps you feeding into continue to be in this profession?
Yeah. So a couple things jumped into my mind. So one is just innovation. I mean, we all know in technology, like innovation is accelerating, if not skyrocketing.
Especially now, yeah.
But in this role, we get to be at the forefront of that in the conversations with our customers.
Yeah.
Well, we're out there actually helping to bring this stuff to market. And so we get to have these really cutting edge conversations. We get to see the reception to the market. We get to see the excitement. We get to see the doubt, and we get to navigate those conversations. And that to me is really fun in the sense of these are brand new things, especially with all the AI stuff that's coming out now. Like nobody knows whether it's us or them. Let's be real. We're taking this as a new product to market, and those are fun. So that's one thing. The second is the variability. No two conversations are the same.
Yeah.
With my customers. They're all obviously unique businesses, have their own unique challenges. Sure, there might be industry challenges that can help from a justification perspective, but at the end of the day, no two conversations are the same.
People may have the perception that sales engineering, talking to prospects, I'm doing demos, maybe I'm working on RFPs. And so there's this perception that, okay, well, you're doing the same thing over and over again. Doesn't that get tiring and boring?
Especially as your tenure grows with a specific company, those relationships that you have with your customers that started with a single conversation, those grow over time. And so the second conversation you have with them is built on top of the first conversation and the third conversation, the fourth conversation, and whatever. And you fast forward 3 years, it's a totally different type of conversation that you're having with them from what you started with. And that's what I'd say when I mean that variability. It's different types of conversations at different customers, but also even within the same customer, everything is constantly evolving within their business, and they're rethinking and reevaluating the way that they're going to market, the way your solution is bringing value to that. But to me, that's really exciting as opposed to, all right, I do the standard basic implementation of the software every time. No, to knock that.
But yeah, it's the ever changing. Last thing I would love to hear from you, Kevin, is you've had such an amazing experience working with all flavors of sales reps.
Yeah.
AE and SC relationship to me is the most critical aspect of this all, the most important relationship. It's the biggest driver of success or failure when the AE-SC relationship doesn't gel, impacts performance, win rates. But when it works really well, it's like magic. You can outbeat competition. They may have 20,000 more features than you. They may be less expensive than you, but when buyers feel that unity, it makes all the difference. You work with many great account executives and not so great account executives, but what are some things that either you've seen reps do really well that has helped you and empowered you and enabled you to deliver the best sales engineering you can for them? Or what are some things that they miss out on?
Well, if I could first just lend some support to the AE-SC relationship being the most critical, I could not agree with that more. That is, when I talk to SEs who are earlier in their career, I underscore that point first. When I end up starting to work with a new rep, I really focus it on initially building the relationship.
Yeah.
We talk, we get to know each other, we humanize ourselves because that is ultimately the foundation. A lot of reps that I have currently and have worked with, they're friends of mine.
Yeah.
That ultimately comes out of building the trust, but building a mutual respect between the two. Hey, let's be real. Let's be open. Let's call each other on, nah, that doesn't work, or that's going to work. Ultimately, the goal for both of us is to try to help our customers get value out of our solutions.
Yeah.
Whether that's bringing it on to get value or adding more to it to get value. And we ultimately are aligned and marching towards that goal. And so I have found that the reps who are receptive to that type of relationship are there. Absolutely. We have the best relationships. We have the best success. And that takes time. You got to build the credibility with them, just like you do with a customer. That sometimes is showing up when you need to show up around things as simple as pulling information together or background information together as we're getting prepared for a meeting. And doing that in a way that's professional and well thought through. You might go over above and beyond in or preparing for particular meetings. Obviously, you want to try to do that as much as possible, but early on, as you're looking to build credibility, that helps them understand like, oh, they've got it, right? Ensuring that what you're supposed to be delivering on, for example, if you're putting a deck together or a demo and you've got to do the dry run, you show up completely prepared for those. Some people might respond to that and say, oh, well, yeah, no kidding, in a manner that obviously is going to align towards the goals that you're looking to. So again, that's that idea of how do I build credibility with them? Sometimes it's also a little bit of, as they get to know you and they see you in action, they obviously understand what you're capable of. And that may mean that on your side, you have to be a little bit more humble in receiving feedback and open and receptive to lots of questions and critically thinking through approaches that you've put in that maybe this is going to work because you've done it 50 times at different customers or whatever it might be. But because they've never worked with you, they may not have the confidence and may not know that level of experience. And so with that is going to come skepticism on their part. You need to be willing to just calmly work through those kind of conversations as you build that rapport, as you get your opportunities to show them like, hey, trust me, this is going to work.
Trust your SC, man.
That's right. And I'd say that because I see a lot of SEs struggle with their rep relationships because SEs can sometimes be very rigid in the way they operate and what they expect. We need to have this qualified and XYZ known before we're willing to put any effort into it or whatnot. And it's like, well, we'll get there, but we might have to be a little flexible as we move into that. But again, once you get there, then it's you got this, we're good. And then here's the sweet spot. and then I'll stop and let you ask whatever other question is I try to build relationships that ultimately get to the point that me and the rep are finishing each other's sentences, either as we're preparing or even in front of our customers. Ideally, it's I might be demoing, they interject with added value because they know
Right.
exactly what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, why it's important to the customer, and they know where I'm going with it. Builds credibility as a team, as opposed to, oh, let the smart person talk. No, we're all smart people. We're not where we are by being dumb or being idiots or just being good about making a relationship. Like,
Yeah.
we're business people and we have a lot of value and a lot of perspective to bring to our customers. So
Anything from in your experience that you think AE is not intentionally not doing it, but maybe they just subconsciously do something that just misses out on being able to optimize that engagement with SEs? Any trends that you've observed that reps just kind of, if they did this or this better, they would just make that relationship so much better?
the thing that jumps out the most, and this is easy for me to say, I admit, because my job is ultimately responsible for this, but reps are more than capable, and in my opinion, should know our solutions at a decently deep level. Do they need to know it to my level? Absolutely not. But I think there's a ton of value in having a deep understanding of the solutions.
Yeah.
It's easy to have this approach of your lane is product and all the details of it, and my lane is working the relationship with the customer, obviously all of the craziness that needs to happen with contract negotiations and all of that, critically important. But the real meat of getting this thing done happens right there in the middle.
Hmm.
And that's to me, a that takes a team to do that. And again, if I was to say like, how can we better that relationship or how can we build more success there? It's absolutely that. It's not that the SE is the smart person and they're going to know all the answers. It's more that we as a team, we know this stuff.
And maybe an element of the fact that reps are more used to SEs, the fact that they know that the SEs are the product expert. Maybe they step back to say,
Yeah.
how do you know as much about the product? Because I got somebody with me
Right.
that knows a lot. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that if you don't know that much, it's hard for you to finish each other's sentences because you shut down when the technical stuff starts.
Yeah. And
And
that's to me is where ultimately want to be is we're finishing sentences.
yeah,
And because there's a confidence that comes with that,
yeah,
right? And there's a belief in what you're doing and what you're bringing to the customer that is contagious. Customers, they understand that. They want to hear that and they feel that and your conviction. So when it's the whole team doing it, like it goes so much further, in my opinion.